Hey everyone, welcome back. After a long break there between videos, this is episode 3 of my Hyrule Park series and Planet Coaster 2. Yeah, a lot longer between videos than I wanted to be with this one. Hoping to get back on track here now though, just between real life stuff going on and then this build taking a lot longer than I thought it would to finish up, with all the little details involved. It just sort of turned into a few weeks rather than falling in with that one episode a week schedule I was aiming for. But anyway, after working on Hyrule Castle, the main focus of the park in last episode, check that out if you haven't seen it. It seemed to make the most sense for today's episode to be getting to work on Castletown, the main Plaza, Main Street area of Hyrule Park. A lot of thought went into this area specifically about how to go about planning like each step of the process, making it a well thought out area for guest flow and whatnot, but also in terms of wanting to keep Hyrule Castle visible in most spots, especially walking in from the entrance, making sure the buildings that you're watching me build now don't really interfere with those sightlines. Then on top of that, having to make it make sense in terms of like the guest flow through the Main Street area, while also keeping everything grounded in that immersion with the ZELDA medieval style architecture that I'm going for. For me, that meant really staying away from like a grid type layout, which admittedly probably would have been a lot easier and a lot quicker to build, but making it feel more like a medieval era village where Zelda games take place. So yeah, I ended up with more of like a winding circuitous pathing system than the grid system. So yeah, you'll be able to see that at the end of the walkthrough of this area. And if you did watch episode 1, you probably already noticed that it wasn't going to be a grid because I did go ahead and outline how I thought I wanted the path to be. And actually in the end, it really was sort of the same outline that I had drawn up in the beginning. So that was cool. So in terms of strategy and order of operations for getting after this area and starting it out, I don't know if this is a normal way to go about building these sections. If a lot of other people do it this way, maybe you guys can let me know how you go about it. But for this project specifically, I wanted to build out the variations of buildings that I'm going to be using for Castletown as like step 1 of the process, and then once I have a bunch of those, I can kind of drag them into spots that I think they might look good in, like within the overall Castletown plot of land that I have here. That way, if they don't, it's easy enough to relocate them and whatnot as the area becomes more built up, and I don't spend a lot of time like building a building specifically for a spot in Castletown, and then it ends up it doesn't really fit there in the end. Now I have this building that was meant for a specific area and a specific plot of land that I have to kind of either redo or fit into a different spot. So this seemed to make more sense for me in this section of the park. And I think it turned out pretty well too. So probably will keep doing that from here on out. So yeah, just building the variations of facades, building shells here first, and then I'll end up placing them and adding the theming details around that once they have their final kind of spot in Castletown. And speaking of ways to go about things and preferences, I got a comment recently on a video, and the viewer mentioned how they liked the pacing, the time-lapse speed, because they were able to see the pieces I was using to help inspire their own projects in Planet Coaster. So for one, that was super cool to see that comment, and that sort of feedback means a lot, so thank you for that. But also, I always wonder if people actually enjoy watching this type of video. I personally do. That's why I ultimately decided to start doing these videos, but that doesn't mean it's for everyone. So yeah, hearing that they were able to follow the build and really see what sort of pieces I was using was cool to hear, encouraging for sure. So yeah, thanks for that. But I bring that up not just to give that viewer a shout out, but also to hopefully get some feedback on these videos so far if you've stuck around to watch any of the previous builds along with this one. I typically try to cut out a decent amount of the fluff in terms of, like the footage of me trying things, deleting, retrying, fine-tuning, rinse and repeat, that sort of deal, because I assume people don't want to or have the time to sit through that whole process. But this video in particular was pretty tough to cut things out, which is why it's a lot longer than the other videos I've released so far. It also may be just because I'm taking on such a large area of land at once for this episode, where typically I focus on like one concentrated spot of a region or a ride or whatever it may be. But anyways, yeah, I'm just curious. Let me know if this becomes too overwhelming to follow, if you'd rather just see more of like a quicker smash smash cuts to a more final version of things that I'm showcasing in that episode, that sort of thing. I personally think it's valuable to see the step-by-step process, at least in the way that I'm showing it here by cutting out some of the experimentation, but still seeing the pieces I'm using and kind of like how I'm orienting each piece and whatnot. Yeah, interested to hear what others have to say about that. And by the way, if you are enjoying this and you're curious to see how the Zelda theme park comes out in the end and want to follow along with this project, why don't you go ahead and click that subscribe button and give this one a thumbs up. Yeah, it would mean a lot. And if you have any thoughts, any feedback, please leave a comment. I always get pumped when I see a comment because it means, people are watching and interacting. It's cool to see. So if you have a moment and you have something to say, don't be afraid. Let me know what you think. Back to the build here. In terms of the style of architecture, I wanted to make sure these buildings were able to be differentiated from one another, but obviously they also still needed to feel part of the same village, so to speak. So I couldn't just build random building types and whatnot, obviously. I had to find a way to make them stand out from each other, but also they still needed to belong, if that makes sense. So that's what I'm doing here, just like different variations of the same sort of feel of building. I also ended up pulling in some of the pirate buildings that I created during my other park project, the Grand Nexus. They ended up having like the same vibe I was going for already, so repurposing those just made sense. I feel like they fit well within this Castletown region with these other buildings that I'm creating now. And then speaking of those pirate buildings, bit of a bummer. I don't know if any one of you watching this video or checking out the Grand Nexus Park project that I had on my channel before this one. I had planned to sort of go back and forth between these two series, so I didn't get burnt out with focusing hard on just one project. But I accidentally saved over that file with this park, so that was, yeah, like I said, it was a huge bummer. I put a lot of hours into that project and felt I was really improving with the process with that park too, and it was helping me with other creations. So yeah, bummer that I lost that, but it's all good. Like the pirate area in particular, I should say, it's something that I was really starting to be proud of. Now it just lives as a 5 or 6 or whatever episode series on my channel, so I'll probably restart something up that's similar to that project once I have more downtime and more time to focus on the game. But for now, I'm just going to focus hard on Hyrule Park, which I'm excited about. Okay, for now I'm gonna step away, let the music carry the build for a bit. I'll jump back in here when I feel the need to explain anything. By the way, I am leaving timestamps, bookmark things in this video since it is a long one, so please feel free to jump around if you'd rather skip to anything specific. And yeah, I will be back in a few minutes. I wanted to say something about this specific spot. It probably seems weird to have an entrance gate type situation right after the actual entrance gate, which is what's behind us in this view here. But that's what I'm doing. But I actually think it was needed, like sort of feel as if you were entering into the Castletown area. That being said, though, I don't know exactly what to do with this little area of purgatory between like the actual park entrance and this Castletown entrance. Obviously, what you see here is not going to be the finished product in terms of theming and stuff. I add a lot more detail at the end of this video off screen that you'll see during the walkthrough. But yeah, if anyone has any other ideas to kind of add things to it after seeing that walkthrough, please, I'm all ears. Would love to get some inspiration there, so let me know. But in terms of this build, what I basically did was borrow the look and feel from the actual entrance gate. That was episode 2 of this series, if you're interested in checking that out. And then I tweaked it a bit to be more like the entrance to a village, I'm hoping, that presumably leads to like the main kingdom or castle or whatever you want to call it. And then I wanted a good place to pull in this Triforce fountain that I had built in my original Hyrule Park project from way back when I first started this game back in the winter time. So this felt like an appropriate place to do that. So the area definitely serves a purpose for sure. But I don't know, as this plays out, would love some ideas from anyone watching on how to dress it up a bit more. And like I said, you won't necessarily see the finished product in this part of the video. That'll come at the end during the walkthrough of the finished area. But yeah, I do finish the quote unquote footprint, so can get kind of an idea there of what could fit in here. And now I am starting to do what I had mentioned earlier. I'm taking all of those pre-made buildings that I worked on at the start of this video and just being able to like bird's eye view it and place the buildings where I think it makes sense and let the town kind of come together in that way. I'm still skeptical. I said earlier that I think I'm going to go with this method from here on out, and I probably will, but I'm still a little skeptical that this is the way to go about these types of areas. So yeah, definitely want to give it another shot because I think it has potential. I just think, I don't know, at some point trying to, again, real life things came up and I was trying to kind of like get this done and those things done. So yeah, definitely want to give it another shot and see how it goes in a more kind of organized fashion. Because I do still have high hopes for this sort of process in terms of it allowing me to organize my thoughts more efficiently and with larger layouts. But yeah, gotta give it another go with the next area of the park for sure. So at this point, I'm getting close to a good baseline for the building arrangements, and that's where the really hard part came into play for me. I won't show a ton of the little details throughout because there was a lot of just kind of trial and error, and I was playing for like 15-20 minutes here and there, adding little things. So it would be like a huge pain to edit, cut those things up, and you know, put them together in this video. And frankly, I didn't even bother recording a lot of that because I just wanted to play the game and feel the flow. And if I wasn't feeling it, I didn't want to force it just to try to get footage. So that's kind of how I did it. But again, obviously we'll see everything come together in the final walkthrough at the end of this video. But yeah, this, again, video is already super long. It was a lot of little minute details that I was playing around with. It didn't make sense to include in the video. But yeah, while we're watching this process, one of the blind spots in this game for me so far has been the pathing and getting used to the pathing system. So I did end up cutting that process out of this video too to spare you guys. But I wanted someone to tell me if they knew, did they update the pathing edit tool? Because lately it seemed a lot more forgiving and less janky than what I remember it being when I started to use that tool more recently. So I don't know if that's just because I've gotten a little better with it and more used to it, or did they actually make some tweaks to make it more intuitive and easy to use. It did make this a little bit easier than past projects, but still cut it out because I didn't want to subject you guys to my fumbling around with the pathing tool, because I'm still definitely working on my skills with that part. I do want to call out the curbs and like the sidewalk type deals that I border the paths with throughout this area. I really like how it kind of ties in like the cobblestone feel and gives it a bit more of an authentic medieval look. It was super tedious to put this along the border of the entire town, but I feel it was worth it. Ultimately, you know, I didn't want to have things fenced in because again, it's supposed to be like village, castle, town type feel. So presumably things would be open to walk around in and go to vendor carts or marketplace plaza things and whatnot. So yeah, I just wanted to call out that technique if anyone's looking to dress up their path borders without using fencing and stuff. I'm going to finish up the speed build with these two last features of the area. This first one is a restaurant, patio restaurant type deal. My thought process here, going back to what I was saying at the beginning of the episode, I didn't want to obstruct the view of Hyrule Castle, but I wanted this path through the middle of town to exist. So I was sort of wondering what could I put in the spot here, because I wasn't going to use any of the buildings I created. Those are too tall for that and would block the view more than I wanted to. I thought about doing some sort of like garden type deal, but didn't necessarily like that idea either. So I landed on a nice restaurant patio thing with ambient lighting. Yeah, it allowed me to make good use of the plot of land while again keeping things, low profile and allowing Hyrule Castle to remain in view for the guests walking through this area. The other thing that you'll see right after this is the souvenir shop I decided to build after everything was placed, because it was starting to feel a little redundant only having like the walk-up quick service type vendors throughout the area. Outside of just this restaurant, I definitely wanted to have like an interaction opportunity for guests outside of the quick service stuff. So knowing I wasn't planning on putting a ride in this main street area, I figured maybe like a souvenir shop would be best and make the most sense for here. And to shout out another commenter, this person helped inspire this idea of theming a beetle inspired shop, like the traveling merchant dude from Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, I started the build trying to make the shop in that vein of Beetle, the traveling merchant, but I was sort of having a creative block on how to go about it, so I ended up just going for a more generic building facade, still keeping it with the vibe of the surrounding buildings. But yeah, again, I super appreciate that commenter leaving the feedback and giving some ideas. They also left some thoughts on how to make it a bit more bustling and lively in terms of like the Castletown area as a whole. So definitely took those thoughts into account when arranging those finer details that we'll see here coming up in a minute with the walkthrough. So yeah, thanks for that comment. Again, the feedback is always so cool to see, being such a small YouTuber right now. So thank you for anyone who's taking a moment to do that. Alright guys, well thank you for watching this long episode. If you stuck with me, I appreciate it. Again, like I said a couple times, leave some feedback if you're willing to. I'm open to any suggestions, anything I can do better. Let me know what you liked. Anything that kind of inspired your projects that you've got going on in your game. Would love to hear it. And yeah, if you liked it, if you enjoyed it, you want to stick around and watch some more, feel free to subscribe, give me a thumbs up. And yeah, for this walkthrough, I'm just gonna kind of let it play out with some relaxing music, I think. So yeah, enjoy all the finer details that I poured my soul into. And I will see you in episode 4. Bye. you.